They broke into my home pretending to be police. They dragged my pregnant wife out of our house in handcuffs. She begged them to check their mistake. They laughed. They locked her up for 3 nights without medical care, and they had no idea. I was the judge waiting on their case. Saturday started the way weekends were supposed to. Slow, quiet, safe. I was fixing a broken fence board in the backyard, humming under my breath, while Emily folded newborn clothes inside. She was 7 months along, belly round, movement slower, but her spirit never dulled. She'd been planning every detail of our daughter's nursery for weeks. The house smelled faintly of fresh laundry and lavender candles. The first knock was loud, not the casual knock of a neighbor, but something sharp, angry. Before I could wipe the sweat off my palms, the second knock came, harder. 3 quick slams that rattled the door frame. Something was wrong. I dropped the hammer, instinct kicking in. As I rounded the corner of the house toward the front porch, I saw them. 3 men standing by my front door. 2 wore dark navy jackets with cheap, shiny badges hanging crookedly off their chests. One clutched a clipboard tight against his chest as if it were a weapon. No marked vehicles, no official gear, no squad car in sight. Their boots were scuffed, their uniforms wrinkled. Before I could speak, the taller one with the clipboard barked, "HOA compliance check. Open up." My blood ran cold. I knew for a fact we weren't under any HOA. We lived just outside the district boundaries, one of the reasons we chose this property in the first place. Emily appeared behind me, one hand instinctively on her belly. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice steady but tense. The man flashed his fake badge half a second, too quick to read, then snapped, "Routine inspection. You're in violation." I stepped forward to block Emily, but before I could open my mouth, the shorter man yanked handcuffs from his belt. "You're obstructing an official inspection," he growled. It was absurd. It was surreal. Emily gasped as the third man lunged toward her. She backed up, but her balance was off, heavy from pregnancy, and her heel caught the lip of the porch step. She stumbled. The man grabbed her arm, yanking it roughly behind her back. "Hey! She's pregnant!" I roared, surging forward. The tall one shoved his clipboard into my chest so hard it almost knocked the air out of me. "Back off, or you'll be detained for assaulting an officer," he hissed. Everything about their body language screamed aggression. Emily struggled, trying to explain. "There must be a mistake. I'm 7 months along." But they ignored her. Cold, robotic. Neighbors had started to peek out their windows, a few pulling out their phones. But no one moved. No one dared. They clamped the cuffs on Emily's wrists, steel digging into swollen joints, and hauled her down the porch steps like a shoplifter. I moved to follow, but the tall one blocked me, reaching for a holstered taser. "One more step and you're under arrest," he warned. The van idled at the curb, not a police cruiser, just a battered white panel van, paint peeling at the corners. They shoved Emily inside like she was cargo. She looked back at me, wide-eyed, confused, terrified. The way a person looks when their world collapses and nothing makes sense anymore. The door slammed. The tires screeched. The van disappeared down the street. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, fists clenched so tight my nails drew blood from my palms. My wife, my unborn daughter, were gone. For a long, brutal moment, the world was silent except for the faint smell of burnt rubber and lavender still drifting from the open front door. Then I moved. I sprinted inside, grabbed my phone, and dialed 911 with shaking fingers. The words poured out faster than my brain could process them. Home invasion. Impersonating officers. Pregnant woman abducted. The dispatcher kept asking for details, plate numbers, badge descriptions, but all I could give were broken images. I hadn't even seen a license plate. By the time the first real squad car rolled up 20 minutes later, it was already too late. They were gone. Emily was gone. And something deep inside me, something colder, sharper than rage, had already begun to awaken. The first real police officers arrived 23 minutes after Emily was taken. By then, the panic had congealed into something worse, cold, methodical dread. I paced in circles on the porch, reliving every second, every mistake. If I had reacted faster, if I had slammed the door shut, if I had tackled them, taser or not. The officers, a man and a woman, moved slow, cautious, textbook. They took my statement, wrote notes, asked the same questions over and over. Did you see a license plate? No. Did they show a warrant? No. Any identifying marks on the uniforms? No. It was all wrong. I described everything I could. The battered white van, the fake badges, the cheap jackets. Every word out of my mouth sounded unreal, like some paranoid fantasy. The officers radioed dispatch, but the response was predictable. No matching arrests logged, no traffic stops, no units dispatched to my address, because these men weren't cops. They weren't anything. By nightfall, Emily's name wasn't in any official database, not in county records, not in hospital admissions, not in holding cells. It was like she had been erased. I made calls, dozens. Every sheriff's department within a 100-mile radius, every hospital ER, friends at the courthouse, everyone said the same thing. No, we don't have her. No, we didn't arrest her. The fear grew teeth. It chewed through my calm, through my logic, until only raw instincts were left. I called my old law professor, a defense attorney now, woke him at midnight. Someone's impersonating law enforcement, I said, voice shaking. He said 3 words that made my stomach drop. You need the FBI. At 2 a.m., agents arrived. Real ones this time. They photographed the porch, dusted for prints, bagged my broken front door lock. They asked the right questions, but even they looked unnerved. Cases of fake police units weren't unheard of. But kidnapping a pregnant woman? That escalated everything. Still, protocols slowed everything down. We need probable cause to start search operations, the lead agent said. We can't just kick in doors. Probable cause. While my wife was handcuffed, terrified, somewhere God knows where. The world narrowed to a pinpoint. I didn't care about jurisdiction. I didn't care about paperwork. I needed Emily back. The night stretched into morning. The sun rose gray and mean. I sat at our kitchen table, surrounded by cold coffee cups and crumpled paperwork, staring at my phone. Nothing. No ransom call. No demands. Just silence. Neighbors dropped by. Hesitant. Guilty. Ashamed. I saw them, Mrs. Park from next door whispered. I thought it was real. They looked official. The footage was shaky, but real. 3 men dragging my wife, throwing her into the van. The badge flashes were quick, deliberate, just long enough to freeze the neighbors in uncertainty, just long enough to make them doubt what their own eyes were seeing. They didn't hesitate. We did, because we still believed in the illusion of authority. By noon the second day, the media caught wind. Local news vans prowled the neighborhood, shoving microphones in my face. Home invasion kidnapping. Pregnant woman missing. The headlines screamed. But behind the flashing cameras and breathless anchors, I knew the truth. No one was coming fast enough. The system was built for aftermaths, not rescues. They would find Emily eventually, alive or dead, but only after the paperwork cleared, after warrants were signed, after jurisdiction squabbled. It was on me. It had always been on me. I stopped talking to reporters. I stopped answering calls that weren't direct leads. Every second counted, and I wasn't wasting another one. At 5 p.m., a break, if it could even be called that. A rookie cop, Officer Daniel Harris, barely old enough to shave, dropped by off shift. Said he couldn't sleep after hearing the report. Said he checked all the traffic cam footage himself. Found something. A battered white van. Wrong plates, mismatched numbers. Pulling into an industrial park 2 towns over. Storage units. Abandoned ones. He played the clip on his cracked phone screen. There. For just a second, I saw it. A flash of lavender. Emily's favorite maternity sweater, disappearing behind a rusted metal door. Not a police station, not a hospital. A storage facility. My chest tightened until I couldn't breathe. She was still alive. Maybe, if I moved fast enough. The second I saw the footage, something in me snapped. I wasn't waiting for backup. I wasn't waiting for protocols. Officer Harris offered to call it in officially. I told him no. Every extra step was another minute Emily spent shackled in some rotting metal box. I grabbed my keys, my sidearm, legally carried, concealed, and drove. The industrial park was 23 miles out, past the city limits, forgotten by everyone except scavengers and squatters. Rows of sagging warehouses, broken chain-link fences, graffiti scrawled across crumbling brick walls. No cameras, no witnesses. Exactly the kind of place where people disappeared. I pulled into the lot, cut the engine, sat there a moment. Heartbeat loud, breath shallow. There were a dozen rows of storage units stretching into the dusk. Every row looked the same. Rusted corrugated doors, padlocks half-hanging, weeds clawing through cracked asphalt. No movement, no sign of life, but I knew she was here. I moved fast and low between the rows, weapon holstered but ready. Listening, watching. Every sound, a bird fluttering from a rooftop, the metallic creak of a distant door, set my nerves on edge. I found the van first. Parked crooked at the edge of the lot, tires half deflated, white paint chipped down to metal, license plates dangling by a single screw. It reeked of gasoline and old sweat. No one inside. Doors unlocked. Inside, on the stained seats, a fake police radio, 2 pairs of zip ties, and a clipboard with forged compliance orders. I photographed everything on my phone. Evidence, insurance. But I didn't linger. The sun had almost dipped below the horizon. Light was dying, and if they realized anyone was coming, if they panicked, Emily would be the first to pay. I moved deeper into the units, row after row, door after door, until I heard it. A faint, metallic thud, weak, desperate, like a pipe being kicked, over and over, without strength. I pressed my ear against the cold steel of Unit 117. Nothing at first. Then, another thud. 3 quick strikes. Panic clawed up my throat. I rapped the door softly with my knuckles. Waited. Another 3 thuds, frantic this time. Someone was inside. I tried the lock. It rattled uselessly, bolted tight. I scanned for cameras. None. No more thinking. I stepped back, braced my shoulder, and slammed into the door. Pain shot through my bones, but the bolt bent slightly. Again, and again. On the 3rd hit, the latch snapped, and the door screeched open a few inches. The air inside reeked of mold, gasoline, and human fear. I shoved through the gap. It was pitch black, except for a thin shaft of light from the broken door. Dust danced like ghosts, and there, crumpled against the far wall, chained to an old plumbing pipe, was Emily. Her wrists were raw where the cuffs had chafed. Her skin was pale, lips cracked. But her eyes locked onto mine with a ferocity I'll never forget. Not fear, not despair. Fight. Even 7 months pregnant, dehydrated, alone. She hadn't given up. I crossed the space in 2 strides. "Emily, it's me," I said, voice low, shaking. She tried to rise, but her knees buckled. I caught her just in time. The cuffs were chained through the pipe. I pulled out my multi-tool, hands fumbling from adrenaline, and sawed through the rusted links. Metal shrieked, but it gave way. The second she was free, she collapsed against me, sobbing. Not words, just raw, broken sounds. I checked her quickly. Shallow breathing, pulse rapid but steady. No visible wounds except deep bruising on her wrists and ankles. She clutched her belly, and for a terrible second I thought she was miscarrying. But she shook her head, gasping, "I'm okay. She's kicking. She's okay." The relief nearly broke me. I scooped her into my arms and staggered toward the door. Every instinct screamed to move faster. As we stumbled into the dying light, I heard a distant engine, reverent voices shouting, metal doors slamming shut. They knew. They knew someone had found her, and they weren't going to run. They were coming back. I tightened my grip on Emily and sprinted toward the truck. We weren't safe yet, not even close. I barely made it to the truck before they appeared. 2 men sprinted out from between the rows of storage units. One carried a crowbar, the other had something worse. A handgun clutched awkwardly, like he wasn't used to it but would still pull the trigger. No uniforms now, no fake badges, just raw panic and violence. I threw the passenger door open, shoved Emily inside. She clutched her belly with one hand, gripped the dashboard with the other. I rounded the front of the truck just as the first man closed in. His face twisted with desperation, not control, not authority, just a cornered rat willing to bite. He swung the crowbar low, aiming for my legs. I dodged back, drew my weapon in a single motion. "Drop it!" I barked. The words came out more animal than human. Raw, loud. For a fraction of a second, he hesitated. Then the second man raised his gun. Instinct fired before thought. I aimed center mass and squeezed the trigger once. The shot cracked across the empty lot, bouncing off the warehouse walls like thunder. The man dropped instantly, weapon flying from his hand, spinning across the asphalt. He howled, clutching his shoulder. The crowbar guy bolted, vanishing between the buildings without looking back. I didn't chase him. I scrambled into the driver's seat, fired up the engine, jammed the transmission into reverse. Tires screamed as I spun the truck around. Emily was breathing in sharp, shallow gasps, still clutching her stomach. "You okay?" I snapped, not even daring to take my eyes off the rearview mirror. She nodded, but tears streamed down her face. Silent, feral tears. The kind that don't need words. I sped toward the exit. A gaping hole in the fence we hadn't noticed before. Heart hammering, hands locked on the wheel so tight my knuckles bleached white. Another van lurched out from behind a storage unit, trying to block the path. Too slow. I floored it. The corner of my bumper caught the front of their vehicle, sent it spinning off into the dirt. I didn't stop to check. We punched through the hole in the fence and roared onto the open road. Only once we hit pavement did I let myself glance at Emily. She was trembling violently, but she was awake, aware, fighting. Our daughter kicked inside her, one desperate drumbeat of life against the chaos. I pulled off onto a deserted stretch of road, killed the lights, and grabbed my phone. No signal. Dead zone. Of course. The industrial park wasn't just abandoned. It was perfectly chosen. No cameras, no witnesses, no cell towers. I drove blind for 5 more minutes, every muscle in my body coiled like wire, every glance at the mirrors half expecting to see headlights bearing down. Finally, a single bar of reception flickered to life. I dialed Officer Harris directly. "We have her," I barked before he could speak. "She's alive. I need an ambulance at Highway 14, mile marker 22, and backup, now." He didn't ask questions. He just said, "On it." I ended the call and turned to Emily. "Stay with me," I said, voice breaking. "You're safe now." Her lips moved, cracked and bleeding. Not words, just a breath. But she leaned her head against my shoulder, trusting me to get her home. Blue and red lights appeared over the hill 10 minutes later. Real ones this time. Real cops. Real paramedics. Guns drawn, EMTs charging forward. I stumbled out with Emily in my arms. She was light. Far too light. But she was breathing. Paramedics cut her free from the zip ties, checked her vitals, started fluids. One of them radioed in. "Dehydrated, bruising, but fetal heart rate strong. Mother conscious and responsive." I collapsed onto the asphalt, knees hitting hard, but I didn't care. Emily was alive. Our daughter was alive. I had gotten them out. But the men who did this were still breathing, still free, and I wasn't finished, not by a long shot. They didn't even try to hide. While Emily was stabilized in the ambulance, I sat in the back of a patrol SUV, wrapped in a blanket I didn't remember taking, hands trembling with adrenaline crash, jaw locked so tight it ached. Officer Harris crouched by the open door. "We're tracking the other suspects," he said quietly. "They made mistakes. Big ones. The idiot who took a bullet, later identified as Kyle Mercer, ex-con, multiple assault charges, was rushed to the hospital under police guard. Before they even stitched his shoulder, he started talking. Sang like a bird, named everyone involved, named the ringleader, Brent Holloway, a two-bit grifter with a record longer than my arm. Burglary, impersonating officials, elder fraud. Their scam was simple: pose as HOA enforcers, target vulnerable homes, mostly elderly, isolated, anyone too scared to ask questions. Find them, harass them, terrorize them into handing over cash or property under fake compliance violations. If someone fought back, intimidation escalated to violence. Emily wasn't even their real target. They thought the house was owned by an old man living alone. When they realized they grabbed a pregnant woman instead, too late. They panicked. Chose the one option that made everything worse. Cover it up. No ransom, no demands, just silence. Leave her locked away to die quietly. Another mystery disappearance no one would solve until it was too late. Except they picked the wrong house and the wrong family. Within hours, warrants were issued. Every squad car from 4 counties was out hunting. By dawn, Brent Holloway and the last of his crew were pulled from a cheap motel 15 miles south. Half drunk, half high, still bragging about their score to anyone who'd listen. In their room, stacks of fake IDs, replica badges, lists of target addresses, seniors, widows, isolated homeowners. Emily's name was circled in red. The DA filed charges before the ink on the reports dried. Kidnapping, impersonating law enforcement, false imprisonment, aggravated assault, conspiracy to commit murder, no plea deals, no bargaining. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage, fingerprints, the weapons, the fake compliance orders, and Emily's sworn statement. Every brutal detail, every hour chained in the dark, every kick from our unborn daughter as she fought to survive inside her. The media storm exploded. CNN, Fox, local affiliates. Everyone wanted the story. "Fake HOA agents kidnap pregnant woman," the headlines screamed. "Judge's wife victim of organized HOA scam." I ignored all of it. Let them feed. I only cared about one thing: making sure these men never saw daylight again. I worked with the DA, built the case myself. Every charge stacked so tight even the most crooked defense attorney couldn't pry them loose. 72 counts total between them, each carrying maximum sentences. No deals, no second chances. When they saw the indictment sheets, even their smirks cracked. The ringleader, Brent, tried to cut a deal last minute, claimed he found religion, begged for mercy. I attended the hearing personally, sat in the front row, arms folded, face stone, watched as his public defender stammered out a plea, watched as the judge, a colleague, a friend, read the charges one by one like hammer blows. No one in that courtroom looked at Brent like a human being anymore. Just garbage. Disposable. When the handcuffs snapped tight around his wrists and he was dragged away to face trial, the first real peace I'd felt in days bloomed deep in my chest. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Judgment was coming, and I would deliver it myself. The trial was scheduled 3 months after the arrests. Fast-tracked. Too much public outrage to allow delays. I wasn't supposed to be involved. As the husband of the victim, and a sitting judge, the ethics board insisted I recuse myself from any direct influence. Technically, I did. Formally. But unofficially? I worked behind the scenes with the prosecution every single day. Line by line, we constructed a case so airtight the defense could barely breathe. The first day of trial, the courthouse was swarming. News vans blocked the street. Protesters waved signs, "HOA tyrants to prison. Justice for Emily!" Inside, the atmosphere was electric. Jury assembled. 6 men, 6 women, most of them homeowners themselves. People who understood exactly what it meant to fear your own front door. I sat behind the prosecution table. Emily sat next to me, her hands resting protectively over her now-born daughter's carrier. Our little girl, Mia, slept through the chaos like nothing could touch her. The defendants shuffled in, wearing cheap suits and cheaper expressions. No uniforms now, no fake authority, just 3 broken men facing the real system they tried to imitate. Brent Holloway, the ringleader, still carried the ghost of his old arrogance. A tight jaw, narrowed eyes, trying to stare down the jury like he had a chance. He didn't. Opening arguments were brutal. The DA didn't waste time. She painted a vivid picture. Fake cops, fake arrests. A pregnant woman handcuffed and left to die in a storage unit without food, water, or medical care. All under the false banner of community rules. The defense tried to spin it. Misunderstanding. Overzealous enforcement. No intent to harm. It didn't land. Not when the prosecution rolled the security footage from the neighbor's phone. Not when they played Emily's recorded 911 call from inside the unit. A scratchy, desperate whisper barely audible through the steel walls. "Help. Please. I'm pregnant." The courtroom was silent except for the occasional muffled sob from the gallery. Witnesses took the stand. Neighbors testified. Paramedics described Emily's physical state upon rescue. Dehydrated, bruised, heart rate spiking dangerously close to cardiac arrest. One paramedic said flatly, "Another 24 hours, maybe less. She would have died. The baby too." The jury sat rigid, faces grim, hands clenched on the arms of their chairs. By the 3rd day, the defense attorneys looked like they were defending war criminals, not bumbling scammers. The final blow came when Officer Harris testified. He told the story of how he found the storage unit footage, how the entire operation had been built on lies. He pointed directly at Brent and said, "He didn't just steal money. He stole safety. He stole peace of mind. He stole time a mother almost never got to spend with her child." The defense didn't cross-examine. They didn't dare. Brent's arrogance cracked after that. He stopped making eye contact, started twitching, started whispering to his lawyer between witnesses, frantic, desperate. It was over. Everyone knew it. The only question left was how hard the hammer would fall. Verdict day came heavy with tension. The jury deliberated only 4 hours. When they returned, no one needed to hear the words to know the outcome. The foreman stood up, paper trembling slightly in his hand, and read, "Guilty on all counts. Kidnapping, assault, impersonating law enforcement, conspiracy to commit murder, false imprisonment, every charge stuck." The defendants slumped in their chairs like puppets with cut strings. No bravado now, no sneers, only raw fear. The judge, not me, but a colleague I trusted, didn't waste time. Sentencing hearings typically drag for hours. Arguments, pleading, begging. Not this time. Brent's lawyer tried a last-minute pitch. Remorse. Troubled upbringing. Bad influences. The judge didn't blink. He asked if the defendants wished to speak before sentencing. Brent stood, tried to open his mouth. Nothing came out. No apology, no excuses. Only the pathetic sound of a man realizing too late that the walls were closing in forever. The courtroom was silent as the judge leaned forward, voice low but lethal. "You kidnapped a pregnant woman," he said. "You impersonated officers of the law to terrorize innocent citizens. You left a mother and child to die slowly in the dark." Each word dropped like a weight. "You showed no remorse, no humanity, no redemption." Pause. Heavy. Final. 75 years, the judge said, his voice cutting clean as a blade. "No possibility of parole. You will die behind bars." He hammered the gavel once. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. Brent's knees buckled. The others wept openly. One tried to lunge toward the defense table, restrained instantly by deputies. The gallery erupted. Some people gasped. Some cheered quietly. One old man in the back whispered, just loud enough, "Justice." Emily didn't move. She sat perfectly still, one hand resting lightly on Mia's carrier, the other gripping the edge of her seat so hard her knuckles whitened. Her eyes never left Brent's as he was cuffed and dragged from the room. No words passed between them, only the cold understanding that he had lost everything, that his victims lived, and that they were stronger than he ever imagined. As they hauled them away, Emily finally exhaled. A long, shuddering breath she'd been holding for months. I reached for her hand under the table. She didn't cry. She didn't collapse. She squeezed back once, firm, steady, and stood up on her own. We walked out together, past the cameras, past the gawkers, past the chaos. Mia stirred in her carrier but didn't wake. The world outside was loud, chaotic, hungry for sound bites. But inside our little family, there was only silence and peace and survival. The news hit national syndication within hours. Pregnant woman kidnapped by fake HOA cops. Judge delivers 75-year sentence. Headlines flashed across every screen. Commentators debated. Pundits spun narratives. Internet forums exploded with fury, memes, outrage. But we stayed away from all of it. Emily needed time. Mia needed safety. And I needed silence. The department assigned cruisers to patrol our street for 2 months straight. Unmarked cars parked discreetly at corners. Deputies made rounds at random hours. Not because there was still danger, because everyone, from the mayor down to the rookie beat cop, knew how badly they had failed us. Neighbors, once distant and polite, became protective. Mr. Hayes from across the street installed new floodlights on his porch, pointed directly at our property line. Mrs. Park baked bread twice a week and left it on our doorstep without knocking. Small acts, silent apologies. One afternoon, a team from a local security firm knocked on the door. A free offer. Full home security system, no charge, lifetime monitoring. I didn't ask who paid for it. I just nodded and let them drill the cameras into the eaves. Inside the house, Emily healed in fragments. Nightmares hit first. Sudden, savage. Waking up gasping, clawing at the sheets. Mia's crying sometimes triggered flashbacks. The sound of steel doors, the rattle of chains. But she fought. Harder than anyone I had ever seen. Physical therapy sessions for the bruised joints. Trauma counseling. Endless patience with herself, refusing to let what happened define her. I watched her rebuild piece by piece, day by day. And I rebuilt myself beside her. No more late nights drowning in case files. No more endless anger chewing at my chest. I was done chasing ghosts. I had a family that needed me here, whole. The old fears lingered, of course. Every time a car slowed near the house. Every time a knock came at the door, louder than necessary. I still carried my sidearm everywhere I went. That would never change. But we lived. We endured. And in the end, that was the only victory that mattered. 6 months later, on a rainy Thursday morning, Emily stood at the front of the local community center, holding Mia on her hip, and cut the ribbon on a new neighborhood watch program. A crowd of 50 people cheered. Reporters took photos. But no headlines followed this time. No sensationalism. No spectacle. Just a mother who had survived hell and decided to turn the ruins into something better. As she spoke, steady, clear, fearless, I realized something. The men who had tried to destroy her hadn't just failed. They had built her, harder, stronger, untouchable. And I, watching from the sidelines with Mia's tiny hand wrapped around my finger, knew without question we had already won. Long before the gavel fell, long before the sentences were read, we won the moment Emily refused to die in the dark, and the world would never, ever break us again.